company coming. I've been looking forward to it for quite some time now. But I decided I would make at least a couple of desserts to have ready in advance. And what I'm going to make today is an apple walnut bundt cake. And this is 3/4 of a cup, about 100 grams of chopped walnuts, and I'm just toasting them lightly in a dry cast iron frying pan. It calls for about 3 apples. I'm using Granny Smith apples, and that's one of my pet peeves. Why does every piece of fruit in the store now have to have a sticker on it? However, now they can notify it, I guess. And they have to be peeled and cored and chopped. So I'm getting out my nifty little peeler here, which also takes the core out. And has them ready, if I can get it off of there, has them ready to be chopped. It's just a spiral. You go down through it 2 or 3 times and it's chopped. I'll bring you back when I have all 3 done there. The little machine makes quick work of that, and the hens really enjoy the cores and the peelings. These apples are going to be caramelized, and cooked in a caramel, so they will eventually be mashed up anyway, but I'll start by at least dicing them into quarters here. That's probably small enough to start with. Now to make the caramel. To make the caramel, it's 1/3 of a cup of granulated white sugar, medium-high heat, and 1 tablespoon of water. And you don't disturb that at all for 4 minutes, in which time it'll hopefully turn into a caramel. I'll bring you back closer to that time. This is at the 2-minute, about halfway through the process. Hasn't started to caramelize yet, but it's bubbling away nicely. And this is at 4 minutes. It still isn't quite ready, but you can see where it's starting to turn a caramel brown in places. It happens very quickly now. There's a very short period of time between just having it caramelize and having it to burn. And I think that's just about it. I'll let it go at that anyway. Now you turn the heat down to low. And add the apples. With the heat on low, it gets covered, and the moisture coming out of the apples will keep it from burning, but as you can see, it's a nice dark caramel brown color there. Covered until they are soft, which should take about 6 minutes. It's had its 6 minutes covered on low. I guess you can see that it's still bubbling away in there. You mash it just a bit if they're soft enough to mash. I'm not so sure that mine are yet. Maybe I'll let them cook a little longer. Anyway, you mash it so that there's still some chunks left. You still want it to be chunky. But I think I'm going to have to wait another few minutes. Mine hasn't really got that soft yet. Maybe my low was too low. I let them go another couple of minutes with the flame turned up a little higher, and that seems to have softened them up. You don't want a pan full of mush like applesauce, but this will break them up a bit. Still leaving some chunks. Seems to be working quite well this time. Now you continue cooking it with the cover off for about another 5 minutes until all of the liquid has been evaporated. Well, there's the finished product, the toasted walnuts and the caramelized apples. I'm going to put the apples in the refrigerator to completely cool while I make the cake batter. I've got the oven preheating to 350 degrees. Now I'll prepare my Bundt pan. Oiled and well floured, especially this funnel area in the middle, which is always hard to get at, I guess. Now, I will just keep kicking that around in there until the whole surface is covered with flour, and I'll knock out any excess. Bring you back when I finish. Well, there's the pan prepared, and now let's get started on the batter. And that's the remaining ingredients lined up. I guess I've got everything there. 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 2½ teaspoons of baking powder, a ½ teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 3/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 3/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And it says sifted. I'm sorry, I never do. I put it in a bowl and take a whisk and mix everything in well. Flour now is pre-sifted when you buy it, at least most flour is. I just tend to make a big mess when I sift things, so this is how I do it anyway. 1 3/4 cups of packed brown sugar, 3 large eggs, a ½ cup of milk, and 2 sticks of unsalted butter. So let's get started assembling this. Well, that's the butter and the brown sugar in the mixer, and it gets beaten on a high speed until it's light and fluffy, and it suggests that that will take about 4 minutes. Start it off low. Bring you back in 4 minutes. Well, that's had its 4 minutes, and it is nice and fluffy and much lighter than it was. Now at a little lower speed, you add the eggs one at a time. Difficult to do because I got them in one bowl, but I'll try my best. I'll scrape the bowl down now before we add the dry and liquid ingredients. Well, that's the bowl scraped down, and now I'm going to add the flour and the milk. It says alternately, starting and ending with flour in 3 additions, so let's see how good I am at that at a lower speed, obviously. scrape the bowl down again now before I add the walnuts and the apples. Ready for the apples and the walnuts. Just want to mix that into the batter as much as possible without beating it too much. And it would help if I raised the bowl back up. I think that's pretty good. By the time I remove the bowl and scrape it down and scrape off the beaters, they're probably combined enough. So now we'll put it in the Bundt pan. And here goes nothing. I don't think I have mentioned that I will of course put the link to this recipe that I'm using below the video on YouTube anyway. So if you're watching this on Facebook or my blog or whatever, if you go to the YouTube channel, the recipe link will be below. I licked off the beater. The batter tastes delicious. I'll bring you back when I have this all in the pan. Well, there was enough to fill the pan really well. I've smoothed it off a bit on the top, and I like to make a loud noise. I like to drop it a couple of times because of how intricate this Bundt pan is, making sure that all the batter gets into the little crevices and creases. Now this goes in the 350-degree oven for approximately 50 minutes. Around 45-50 minutes. Should test it with a toothpick or a cake tester, and if it comes out clean, it's ready to come out. If not, leave it a little longer until the toothpick comes out with nothing on it. I'll bring you back when it's out of the oven. Well, in my oven it took 55 minutes, and now it cools for 10 minutes before you try to remove it from the pan. Fingers crossed. I'll bring you back when I give that an effort. Well, here goes nothing. It's had its 10 minutes of resting. And we'll see if I can get it out of the pan. Not sure. I think I felt it release. Yeah. It released and it's all there. It's not in the pan. What do you know? Now it will set on the rack here until it is completely cool. And I will bring you back at that point, but I'm planning to freeze it. Just for a few days actually, 2 or 3 days, but I think it would be better if I froze it. It would stay fresher. And when you see the link and the recipe, there is a glaze recommended, a very simple glaze made with icing sugar and I think a couple of tablespoons of apple juice. I'm not going to do that. I won't do anything to it before I freeze it, but when I bring it out of the freezer, I think I will dust it with icing sugar. Just because of the shape that this Bundt pan makes of the cake. I made one, the last one, if you've seen my video. I was never happy with the way the glaze worked on it, because the glaze, instead of just running down over the sides nicely, goes down through all of these valleys and channels here. If it was a more classical shaped Bundt pan, I would do the glaze and it would look very nice dribbling down the sides, whatever. But I think with this, all I will do is dust it with icing sugar. But I'll bring you back after it's cooled and ready to go in the freezer here. Completely cooled and on the cake caddy. It's going to go in the freezer on the cake caddy. It'll only be there for a few days. And then I'll be bringing it back out to thaw it up and eat it anyway. But I'd really like to have a slice right now. It smells very good. I like all of those different spices together. And the fact that the apples and walnuts are in there, two of my favorite things. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have a Bundt pan and want to try making this cake, I wish you luck with it. Thank you very much for watching.